The mother horse's desperate act to save her baby from a crocodile's jaws left everyone in tears. At the Riverside Ranch in South Florida, just where the grassy plains meet the murky waters of the Everglades, lived a beautiful brown mare named Maple. Her chocolate-colored coat gleamed in the sunlight, and her gentle nature made her a favorite among the ranch hands. Tom and Mary Wilson, who had owned the ranch for 20 years, had raised Maple from a foal. "There's something special about that mare," Tom would often say, watching her gracefully move across the pasture. "She's got both beauty and brains." Maple was known for her intelligence and protective nature. Even before becoming a mother, she would watch over the younger horses in the herd, keeping them away from the water's edge where alligators and crocodiles sometimes lurked. When Maple gave birth to her first foal in early spring, everyone at the ranch celebrated. The baby colt, named Rusty for his rich brown coat that matched his mother's, was strong and spirited from the start. "Look how she watches him," Mary observed during those first few days. "She barely sleeps, always keeping one eye open." Maple's maternal instincts were remarkable. She would position herself between Rusty and any perceived threat, no matter how small. When the ranch hands approached to check on the foal, she would stand close by, watchful but trusting of the humans she'd known all her life. The pasture where Maple and Rusty spent their days was partially bordered by a creek that fed into the larger wetlands. While the ranch had built sturdy fencing along most of the water's edge, there were still a few areas where the horses could access the water for drinking. "We've never had problems with the local wildlife," Tom explained to visitors. "The horses are smart enough to stay away from the deeper water, and we monitor the area daily for any signs of predators. But nature can be unpredictable, and the unusually hot spring had brought more crocodiles into the creek than usual." The ranch hands had spotted several in recent weeks, leading Tom to plan additional fencing. Rusty grew quickly, developing his mother's athletic build and curious nature. By 3 months old, he was full of energy, testing his boundaries while Maple watched protectively. His brown coat, slightly lighter than his mother's, shone with health. The ranch's veterinarian, Dr. Sarah Cooper, had just completed Rusty's routine checkup on that fateful morning. "He's developing beautifully," she told Mary. "Maple's doing an excellent job with him." None of them could have predicted how Maple's maternal instincts would be tested that very afternoon, or how her protective nature would manifest in an act of extraordinary courage. As the day progressed, the Florida heat intensified. The horses gathered near the creek for their afternoon drink, a daily routine that had always been peaceful. Maple kept Rusty close, as usual, watching the water's surface with the vigilance that had become second nature. The ranch hands were busy repairing a fence on the far side of the property. Tom was in his office reviewing weather reports, and Mary was preparing feed in the barn. It was a normal day at Riverside Ranch, but in moments, it would become one that none of them would ever forget. The only warning was a slight ripple in the creek's surface, barely noticeable in the afternoon glare. But Maple saw it. Her ears pricked forward, her muscles tensed, and her maternal instincts went on high alert. It happened in a flash. As Rusty bent down to drink from the creek, the water exploded upward. A massive crocodile, over 12 feet long, lunged from the murky depths, its powerful jaws snapping at the young foal's legs. Rusty let out a terrified whinny as the crocodile's teeth grazed his front leg. But before the predator could get a firm grip, Maple reacted with the speed and precision that only a mother's instinct could fuel. Without hesitation, the mare reared up on her hind legs, her powerful form casting a shadow over the attacking crocodile. Her eyes blazed with determination as she brought her front hooves down with tremendous force directly onto the crocodile's back. The impact was devastating. Her hooves, weighing hundreds of pounds and driven by maternal fury, slammed into the reptile's scaly body. The crocodile's grip on Rusty loosened slightly, but it wasn't letting go entirely. Maple struck again, this time targeting the crocodile's head. Her hooves connected with precision, forcing the predator to release its hold on her foal. The sound of the impact echoed across the creek, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. Tom, who had been walking toward the pasture, heard the commotion and began running toward the scene. "Mary!" he shouted toward the barn. "Call Dr. Cooper back. Now!" But Maple wasn't done. As Rusty scrambled backward, limping but alive, his mother positioned herself between him and the crocodile. The predator, though dazed, tried to lunge again. This time, Maple's response was even more ferocious. She reared up once more, her brown coat glistening with sweat in the Florida sun, and struck repeatedly. Her hooves found their mark again and again, hitting the crocodile's sensitive snout and eyes. Each blow was calculated, driven by the primal need to protect her offspring. The crocodile, faced with this unexpected and powerful resistance, began to retreat. But Maple, in an extraordinary display of protective instinct, followed it to the water's edge. She continued striking with her hooves until the predator fully submerged and disappeared into the murky water. Only then did Maple return to Rusty, who stood trembling a few yards from the creek. She nudged him gently, checking him all over for injuries, her sides heaving from the exertion of the fight. Tom reached them just as Mary and two ranch hands arrived at the scene. They found Maple standing guard over Rusty, her eyes still fixed on the water, ready to defend against any further threats. "I've never seen anything like it," Tom said, approaching cautiously. She knew exactly what to do. Dr. Cooper arrived within 20 minutes, finding Rusty still shaking but surprisingly calm under his mother's protective presence. The foal had sustained only minor injuries, a few scratches on his leg where the crocodile's teeth had grazed him. "He's incredibly lucky," Dr. Cooper said as she treated the wounds. Without Maple's quick action, she left the sentence unfinished, but everyone understood what could have happened. Throughout the examination, Maple refused to leave Rusty's side. She watched every movement of the vet's hands, not with aggression but with the same protective attention she'd shown since his birth. The ranch hands worked quickly to install temporary fencing along the creek, while plans were made for a more permanent solution. Tom contacted local wildlife authorities to report the incident and discuss options for preventing future encounters. As the sun began to set, Maple and Rusty were moved to a secure paddock far from the water. The mare finally relaxed slightly, though she continued to stand between her foal and any perceived threat. "Look at how she's still protecting him," Mary observed, watching through the paddock fence. "She's not going to let anything happen to that baby." News of Maple's heroic act spread quickly through the local community. Other ranch owners came to witness the aftermath and discuss similar safety measures for their own properties. But for Maple, nothing had changed. She simply did what any mother would do: protect her child at all costs. She continued to watch over Rusty as he recovered, her brown coat matching his as they stood together in the safety of their paddock, their bond stronger than ever. In the days following the attack, Maple's heroic act became the talk of Florida's equestrian community. Local news crews arrived at Riverside Ranch, hoping to capture footage of the brave mother horse and her recovering foal. "We need to protect their peace," Tom insisted, limiting media access to distant observation only. He understood that Maple and Rusty needed calm and quiet to recover from their ordeal. Dr. Cooper visited daily to check Rusty's wounds. "The physical injuries are minor," she explained while changing the bandages on his leg. "But we need to watch for signs of trauma in both of them." Throughout each examination, Maple stood vigilant, her brown eyes following every movement, her ears constantly swiveling to monitor their surroundings. The most noticeable change was in their drinking habits. Rusty now refused to approach any standing water, even the shallow troughs in their secure paddock. Maple had developed a new routine. She would test the water first, circling the trough several times before allowing her foal to drink, and then only under her close supervision. Mary began hand-delivering their water in buckets, trying to help rebuild their confidence. "It's remarkable how intelligent they are," she said, watching Maple carefully inspect each bucket before nudging Rusty forward. "She's teaching him to be cautious but not fearful." Wildlife authorities had successfully tracked and relocated the crocodile to a more remote area of the Everglades. They praised the ranch's quick response in improving their security measures. The creek area was now fortified with higher fencing and additional barriers, ensuring no wildlife could access the horses' drinking areas. Other ranches in the area began implementing similar safety measures. Maple's story was a wake-up call for all of us, said neighboring rancher Bill Thompson. We can't take chances with our animals' safety. A week after the incident, Rusty's physical wounds were healing well, but his emotional recovery was still ongoing. He would startle at sudden movements and stick even closer to his mother than before. Maple responded by becoming even more attentive if that was possible. The mare developed a fascinating new behavior. Before entering any new area, she would scan it thoroughly, even pawing the ground to ensure it was safe. Other horses in the ranch began mimicking her cautious behavior, creating a ripple effect of increased awareness throughout the herd. Dr. Cooper brought in an equine behavioral specialist, Dr. James Martinez, to observe the pair. What we're seeing here is extraordinary, he noted. Maple isn't just protecting her foal. She's actively teaching him survival skills. This kind of cognitive response to trauma is remarkable in horses. The most touching moments came during the quiet times, when Maple and Rusty would stand together in their paddock, their brown coats gleaming in the sunlight, their bodies often touching as if to reassure each other of their presence. Maple would periodically nuzzle Rusty's neck, checking his healing wounds, while the foal would respond with gentle nickers. 2 weeks after the incident, Tom and Mary decided it was time to gradually reintroduce them to the main pasture. They chose early morning for the first attempt, when the air was cool and calm. Maple led the way, her steps deliberate and careful, constantly checking back on Rusty. Watch how she's mapping out safe zones, Dr. Martinez observed. She's creating mental landmarks of secure areas where they can retreat if needed. The other horses in the herd welcomed them back with gentle nickering. Several maras formed a protective circle around Maple and Rusty, demonstrating the strong social bonds that horses naturally form. This support seemed to help both mother and foal relax slightly. Yet Maple never fully lowered her guard. She had developed a new habit of positioning herself between Rusty and any potential threat, no matter how small. When planes flew overhead casting shadows, she would quickly move to shield him. If unfamiliar vehicles approached the ranch, she would guide him to the center of the herd. She's hypervigilant, Dr. Martinez explained, but not in a harmful way. She's found a balance between protection and allowing her foal to develop normally. As spring turned to summer, Maple's story spread far beyond the local horse community. Dr. Martinez had documented her exceptional protective behaviors, and his research paper was gaining attention in veterinary circles nationwide. What makes this case unique, he wrote, is not just the mother's initial brave response, but her subsequent adaptation and teaching behaviors. She's effectively created a safety protocol for her foal that other horses are now emulating. The Wilsons found themselves hosting veterinarians and horse behaviorists from across the country, all eager to observe Maple's protective techniques. The mare's methods of scanning surroundings, testing ground stability, and creating safe zones became a model for training other horses in predator-prone areas. One morning, as the summer heat began to build, Mary noticed something remarkable. Maple was gradually teaching Rusty to approach water again, but in a completely new way. She would lead him to different water sources, troughs, buckets, and small pools, showing him how to check for danger before drinking. "Look at that," Tom pointed out to visiting experts. She stops at 3 different points before approaching water. First, she surveys the surroundings, then checks the ground stability, and finally tests the water itself. She won't let Rusty drink until she's completed all 3 steps. The Florida Wildlife Commission used Maple's story in their new safety guidelines for ranches near waterways. Her incident sparked a statewide review of horse property regulations, leading to enhanced fencing requirements and improved water access designs. Rusty's recovery continued steadily. His physical wounds had healed completely, leaving only faint scars on his leg. While still cautious around water, he was growing into a confident young colt under his mother's careful guidance. His brown coat, matching maples, had developed a healthy shine that reflected his returning vitality. Local school groups began visiting the ranch to learn about animal safety and maternal instincts in nature. Maple and Rusty became living examples of both danger awareness and the power of maternal protection. The children were particularly moved by how the mother and foal stayed close to each other, their matching brown coats often touching as they moved through their daily routines. The most important lesson, Mary would tell the students, is how Maple turned a frightening experience into a teaching opportunity. She's not just protecting Rusty, she's educating him. The ranch implemented new safety protocols based on Maple's natural instincts. Water access points were redesigned with elevated platforms and clear sightlines. Other ranches in Florida began adopting these Maple protocols, as they came to be known. Dr. Cooper continued her regular checkups, amazed by both horses' resilience. Maple's protective behaviors haven't diminished, she noted, but they've evolved into something more sophisticated. She's teaching survival skills not just to Rusty, but to the entire herd. Indeed, the other horses had adopted many of Maple's safety practices. The herd now moved as a more coordinated unit, with experienced Maras taking turns watching the water's edge while others drank. Young foals were always positioned at the center of the group. As summer progressed, Maple began allowing Rusty more independence, but always within carefully defined boundaries. She would watch from a strategic position as he played with other foals, ready to intervene at the slightest sign of danger. "She's found the perfect balance," Martinez observed during one of his follow-up visits. "She's protecting without smothering, teaching without frightening. It's a masterclass in maternal care." The incident had transformed Riverside Ranch into a model facility for equine safety. Ranch owners from as far away as Texas and California came to study their water management systems and safety protocols. But for Tom and Mary, the most meaningful change was seeing how one mother's brave act had created a lasting legacy of protection and education. By late summer, Rusty had grown into a strong young colt, his confidence returning under Maple's careful guidance. While the scars on his leg remained as a reminder of that terrifying day, his spirit had fully recovered. The mother and son pair, with their matching rich brown coats, had become living symbols of survival and adaptation. What's most fascinating, Dr. Martinez noted during a documentary filming, is how their relationship has evolved. Maple is no longer just protecting. She's actively preparing Rusty for independence. This was evident in their daily routines. Maple had developed a sophisticated system of subtle signals, different nickering sounds for various types of threats. One distinct sound meant, "Stay away from water." Another warned of overhead predators, and a third called Rusty to her side immediately. The University of Florida's veterinary school began incorporating Maple's story into their curriculum. "We're using her protective behaviors as a case study in animal intelligence and maternal instinct," explained Dr. Sarah Thompson, head of equine studies. Her responses were far more complex than simple fight-or-flight reactions. Tom and Mary continued to receive requests from media outlets wanting to document Maple's story, but they remained selective, prioritizing educational opportunities over sensationalism. When they did allow filming, it was always from a respectful distance and focused on the educational aspects of Maple's protective techniques. One morning, something remarkable happened that proved just how far Maple's influence had spread. A young mare in the herd, pregnant with her first foal, began mimicking Maple's safety protocols. She would practice the three-step water approach and scan her surroundings just as Maple did. "She's teaching the next generation," Mary observed, watching the pregnant mare follow Maple's example. These safety behaviors are becoming instinctual for the entire herd. The ranch's success in preventing further incidents caught the attention of the National Equine Safety Association. They sent representatives to study the Maple Protocol and incorporate it into their national guidelines for ranches in wildlife-rich areas. Rusty, now 6 months old, had begun showing signs of his mother's intelligence. He would often stand guard for younger foals while they drank, positioning himself just as his mother had done for him. His watchful nature, combined with his growing strength, made him a natural leader among the younger horses. "He's not just surviving, he's thriving," Dr. Cooper remarked during a checkup. "And he's passing on what his mother taught him. That's the true measure of successful adaptation." The Wilsons hosted a safety symposium where ranchers from across the Southeast gathered to learn about their enhanced security measures. During the event, Maple and Rusty demonstrated their water safety routine, showing how they maintained vigilance while still carrying out necessary activities. "Look at how she positions herself," Tom explained to the gathered crowd. "She's always at an angle where she can see both the water and her foal. Nothing gets past her." Local schools began including Maple's story in their nature education programs. Children learned about wildlife safety and the importance of respecting natural boundaries. They were particularly impressed by how the horses had adapted to live safely alongside wildlife without needing to harm them. As autumn approached, the ranch celebrated a significant milestone: 6 months without any wildlife incidents. The new safety measures, inspired by Maple's protective instincts, had proven remarkably effective. Other ranches that had implemented similar protocols reported the same success. During this time, Maple's behavior continued to evolve. She began allowing Rusty more freedom to explore, but always within a carefully monitored framework. She would watch from strategic positions as he ventured further from her side, ready to signal at the first sign of danger. "She's teaching him independence without compromising safety," Dr. Martinez observed. "This is sophisticated parenting by any measure." 1 year after the incident, Riverside Ranch hosted a special anniversary event celebrating the changes Maple's brave act had inspired. The mother and son stood together in their favorite spot in the pasture, their brown coats gleaming in the Florida sunshine, a living testament to survival and adaptation. Rusty had grown into a handsome yearling, nearly as tall as his mother now. While the small scars on his leg remained, they told a story of survival rather than trauma. He had inherited Maple's watchful nature but combined it with a confident demeanor that drew other horses to him. The transformation we've seen in this past year goes beyond just these 2 horses. Tom addressed the gathered crowd of ranchers, veterinarians, and wildlife experts. This changed how we think about horse safety and wildlife coexistence. The impact of Maple's story had indeed reached far beyond the ranch's boundaries. The Maple Protocol had been adopted by over 200 ranches across the Southeast, and reported incidents of wildlife encounters had dropped by 70%. Dr. Martinez's final research paper, titled Maternal Intelligence and Adaptive Behavior in Equines, the Maple Case Study, was published in leading veterinary journals. It documented not only the initial rescue but the sophisticated teaching methods Maple had developed afterward. "What we've witnessed here," he explained, "is how one mother's instinctive act of protection evolved into a comprehensive system of safety behaviors that spread throughout an entire herd." The most remarkable development came from Rusty himself. Now old enough to join the Colts group, he had taken on a leadership role, teaching younger foals the safety protocols his mother had ingrained in him. He would position himself between younger horses and potential threats, just as Maple had done for him. "He's carrying forward his mother's legacy," Mary observed proudly. "But he's doing it in his own way, adding his own understanding to what she taught him." The ranch's new water management system, inspired by Maple's protective tactics, had become a model for other facilities. Elevated drinking platforms, clear sight lines, and strategic fencing had created safe zones that allowed horses to drink without fear while maintaining natural vigilance. During the anniversary event, visitors watched in amazement as the entire herd demonstrated their coordinated water approach. Led by Maple and Rusty, they moved as a unified group, with experienced horses taking guard positions while others drank. "This isn't just about avoiding danger anymore," Dr. Cooper explained to the observers. "It's about smart adaptation and community protection. These horses have created their own safety culture." The Florida Wildlife Commission used Riverside Ranch as a case study in their new guidelines for wildlife management near equestrian facilities. They praised the balance achieved between protecting domestic animals and respecting natural wildlife. As the day drew to a close, Maple and Rusty stood together near their favorite oak tree, their matching brown coats catching the golden light of sunset. Their bond had evolved from pure protection to something more profound, a partnership in teaching and leading others. A year ago, we witnessed a mother's desperate act to save her baby, Tom reflected. Today, we're seeing how that moment of crisis transformed into a movement for positive change. The ranch continued to receive visitors from around the world, all eager to learn from what became known as the Maple Method. But for Maple herself, nothing had changed. She continued her daily routines of protection and teaching, passing on her wisdom to each new generation of horses. Rusty's story of survival and Maple's demonstration of maternal courage had become more than just a dramatic tale. It was now a blueprint for safety, adaptation, and the powerful bond between mother and child. As night fell on the anniversary day, the ranch settled into its usual peaceful routine. Maple and Rusty stood close together in their favorite spot, their shapes silhouetted against the darkening sky. They remained a constant reminder that from one act of maternal courage, an entire community had learned to be safer, smarter, and more connected.